Hi there. Welcome everybody to our 11:30 a.m. CET keynote at the Digital Container Summit 2020. My name is Christian. I'm CEO and co-founder of Container Exchange, and we're super proud and excited to have our colleagues from the Boston Consulting Group join us today for a keynote on the COVID rebound for the container industry. We have both Ulrich and David join us today. Ulrich is a senior partner in the Copenhagen office, and David in the partner in the Paris office. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit, of course, themselves. The exchange heritage is born out of BCG. I was working with Ulrich for a long time on many shipping projects, where the idea for a neutral platform in the container logistics industry was born, essentially a platform for spot leasing and selling of containers. Super excited to have you guys. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you.
Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Ulrich Sanders. I'm a senior partner with BCG based in Copenhagen. I lead shipping globally for BCG. I actually started my career in Maersk Line a million moons ago, but the last 22 years I've been focusing on advising shipping companies globally. And as part of that, as Christian mentioned, we did actually found the Container Exchange many years ago, and it just fills me with a lot of pride to see how Christian and Johannes has taken this forward and really made a super nice thing that is revolutionizing the way that we think about containers. So really congratulations on that. With me today, I have David. David, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so David Parlong, I'm with BCG at the Paris office. I'm a partner focusing on industrial goods broadly and TNL more specifically. I joined BCG only 1 year ago from the industry. I used to be a member of the executive committee of CMA CGM in charge of strategy and M&A.
Thanks a lot, David. If you can move to the next page, please. Yeah. So let me just quickly introduce BCG and what we do in shipping. So first of all, many of you may have heard the name BCG somewhere. We are a truly global consulting firm. We have more than 90 offices around the globe in more than 50 countries, and we have more than 24,000 employees. Now, about 100 of those, they are specialized in shipping. We are based in 8 shipping hubs, as you can see on the left-hand side below, where we have full pyramids of shipping consultants, and obviously they are kind of the major places that shipping is done. Actually, we serve 55% of the top 100 in shipping. We have them as our clients, and just the last 5 years, we've done close to 200 projects along the shipping value chain. Today, we're going to talk about some of the research that we do because we, of course, do a lot of consulting in the industry, but we also pride ourselves to be helping the shipping industry in different ways by developing different assets that the shipping industry can use. One, of course, as you know, is the Container Exchange. We also have a very elaborate benchmark on shipping costs. We run various intellectual models, and the one that we're going to see today is actually one of those. So what we have is a container model that tries to predict the TEU development of major trade lanes. This is a model that we spent quite some years building, and also a model that we keep challenging ourselves in terms of the rigor that we use to basically predict. And what we're going to talk about today is how those models are very difficult to run in times of certain change. And how we basically adapted our models to accommodate for those changes, more specifically, of course, COVID that we'll be talking about. So what we want to do is to talk a little bit about how the model works, but more specifically, how we see the container demand going forward, and also how we see that kind of a little bit more the average by trade lane. But with these words, I'm just going to hand it over to David, and we invite questions either on the chat or if you just open your mic, if that's possible, and just fire off the questions either during the presentation or at the end, trying to keep it as lively as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulrich, for the introduction. So let me start by discussing a bit what happened during the lockdown period and in the recent month. I will then focus a bit more about the summer surge, and then we will discuss what is the most difficult question, i.e., what we think could happen in the coming month. First of all, what you are seeing on this graph, in green you have the volumes, and in gray you have the prices. What you are seeing here is that, I mean, the start of the year 2020 was quite okay, and then you had this unprecedented drop after Chinese New Year due to the lockdown in China. Then you had a kind of a reflux of volume, and now volumes are stabilizing near to the level of 2019. What is very interesting in terms of our industry is that in the dynamic in terms of prices. I mean, the liner industry has a wide history of, destructing value by competing in terms of price. And this time, what we saw globally from the liner perspective is a very mature industry able to manage capacity. I know that a lot of you guys are freight forwarders, and on the contrary, for you, it has probably been very, very difficult to deal with this capacity management from the liner side. But if you look at prices, what you can see is that, again, the capacity management from the liners, let it be through a wider number of idling of ships or a large number of blank sailings, has been quite efficient. And you even add in April this, what you are seeing in terms of bump of prices, i.e., at that time, there were a lot of blank sailings, and the demand was quite high compared to this capacity. And so it's a bit counterintuitive when you look at what happened in the past. But during this crisis, the prices were quite high. If I move now to what is happening currently and during the summer, it's even more interesting. In terms of idling of fleet, we are currently at a level close to what was the 2019 level, i.e. we are, let's say, back to normal. Volumes, and here you are seeing in the middle of my slide a number of port calls. It's still below 2019, but we are getting close. And the most striking fact is what you see on the right hand of the slide is that you had during this summer a huge increase of prices of freight rates on the market. And again, what is happening is that during the crisis, liners have reduced a lot their capacity, and now they are progressively putting back capacity on the market. And as the demand is coming back to a more normal level, there is, as a consequence, a tension between demand and capacity on our market, leading to this increase of prices. The direct consequences of this equilibrium is what you will see on the next slide, is that we are currently, in fact, we are forecasting that it will be a good year in terms of EBIT margin for the liners. Again, why is that so? Let me look at revenue. You had a drop in volumes, but you have a good behavior and high prices. And even during the summer, you had a phenomenon by which the increase of prices in a way offset the relative decrease of volumes on some of the trades. So this is for the revenue part. And now if I look at the costs, as you probably know, the two main buckets of cost of a liner are handling costs from the one end and bunker costs from the other end. And you know that liners have enjoyed low bunker costs. So the direct consequences, quite efficient in terms of maintaining revenue through this price management, top line, costs, low cost due to bunker cost, direct consequence, EBIT margin will be good. And so, I mean, if I take the position of a liner, I mean, again, quite a mature industry in terms of management of this crisis. You may, an interesting question from the strategic perspective is, why is that so? I think that, first of all, liners have learned from their past mistakes, i.e., they have not tried, despite low volumes, to fight one another by proposing low rates to you guys, freight forwarders or shippers. And the second reason why is know that you have these alliances. It's a lot easier to do capacity management because I mean you have basically 3 products on the main trade lanes, and if the 3 alliances decide to be reasonable and to manage capacity in an effective way, then directly you control the market. So you do not have the overall behavior of the market do not depend on 10 or 15 different decisions from liners. It's basically free alliances deciding. And so if I look globally at the industry, I mean, quite an efficient management from the liner side. The situation has been more complicating for the clients and for the freight forwarders because, I mean, you guys had to fight for slots on ships for your clients, and I know that it in a way it also explains why solutions such as the digital container exchange have been very helpful during this period. Let me now discuss a bit what will happen in the next month, or what could happen. The question for us is the following. We have macroeconomic scenarios. I am sure all of you are listening in the radio, on TV, or reading newspaper articles about potential behaviors in terms of impact on GDP, future stimulus package from different governments. And the question for us in the freight forwarding or liner industry is how will these macroeconomic scenarios translate into container volumes? And that's what we are working on at BCG. And in fact, as Ulrich already mentioned, we have built a model and an algorithm able to translate macroeconomic scenarios into volume scenarios for the container industry. Why is it different now than what was the case some years ago? What we are showing on this graph is how the total throughput on the market is evolving. So that's what you have in light green, and how the real GDP is evolving. That's what you have in dark green. For the past 10 years, you had a relationship between these two variations close to 1. What it means is that basically when the GDP does plus 2%, then the volumes globally they are doing plus 2%. When it's 5, it's 5. But typically when you have a crisis, and that's what I circled in red here, you have kind of what I'm calling an overreaction of the container market. What we typically saw in 2009 is that, I mean, the container volumes decreased 5 times more than the GDP. So, you have what we call a non-linearity. You have a behavior which is a normal behavior when the relationship now is close to 1-to-1, and you have a crisis behavior when you can have a crazy phenomenon and kind of an overreaction of the market. And if in a way you are remembering about my first slide, let me show it again. You see this kind of overreaction. I mean, you had a drop of volumes which is completely crazy compared to what was happening in terms of GDP worldwide, and then you have a very huge bump, and you did not have plus 25% of GDP between February and March. In March, the world globally was not having such a swing in terms of GDP. So what you are seeing here is that typical crisis mode of our industry with kind of an overreaction in terms of volumes. And that's why, I mean, it's complicated to understand and also to modelize in terms of algorithm, is that you have to build something different to understand crisis mode compared to non-crisis mode. And I mean, and that's what we are doing with our model. So how does it work? Basically, what we are taking is that we have a lot of past historical data, as you can imagine. We have data, also forward-looking data, most of them being macroeconomic data. And from there, analyzing the type of pattern we are seeing, we are trying to translate our macroeconomic assumption into container shipping assumption. We are able to do it at quite a detailed level. We are able to do it at trade level, making a difference between head haul and back haul, and also looking at what is inside the container. We are able to do scenarios on how will this type of stuff in containers evolve in terms of volumes. Then you forecast, and what you have as an output is scenarios in terms of volume dynamic. Of course, when you are trying to describe what is happening during this crisis, the key input is what you think will happen in terms of macroeconomics. I'm sure you have heard a lot about the shape of the shock. It's everywhere in the press, and it has been for quite some weeks now. It can be a V meaning you come back to the previous level of in terms of volume and dynamic. The V can be a short V. It's quite of what we are seeing on some markets currently, typically Transpac. It can be a deeper V. It can be also a U. A U means you are coming back to the same growth rate, but not the same level. In a way, you have lost some millions of TU and you do not come back to the previous level. And it can also be a L meaning you do not come back to the previous level and you have a slower dynamic. What I would like to highlight here is that, you know, it's not like the container market is U or V. What we are seeing currently in terms of macroeconomic is that on some countries you can have a V type of behavior because this economy is very resilient and the government has been very efficient. In some other case, you can have a U or a L. It depends on a lot of factors: what the government is doing, how the consumer are responding to the crisis, in terms of consumption behavior. Do they want to keep their money on their bank account rather than spending it? And it depends also on the structure of a given economy in terms of, you know, production, level of production and type of production. And that's why, I mean, it's important to have a model which is able to, I mean, input a lot of different macroeconomic data. Because, I mean, it's not just like choosing between U or V, it's inputting what you think will happen from a macroeconomic perspective, country by country, and then deriving from it behavior in terms of container volumes. Let me start by giving you a view of what it means globally. What you are seeing on this graph is the overall container market. Currently, the type of drop we are seeing is around, let's say, 10 million TEUs less for 2020, and then a rebound. What we have shown here on this graph is how a V long U and L translate into scenarios for container volumes. Without surprise, if you think that it's a V macroeconomically speaking, you will get a V globally in terms of container volumes. The interesting question is that it's not V gives V, it's a V of, let's say, minus 3% of GDP. What does it imply in terms of V on container? That's the question of multiplier I just mentioned before. But even more interestingly is the question of how things de-average in terms of trades. Because what we are seeing both, I mean, currently on the market, but also in our model, is that the impact per trade might be very different. What we have put on this slide, so this one is just, I will go quickly, just looking at the variations of volumes from a year to another, but let me focus on this one. What we have put here in terms of color here is that how we think the COVID crisis might impact the dynamic of volumes per trade, head haul and back haul. So let me just give you some keys to understand the graph. Circles, when you are circled in orange, it means head haul, circled in blue means back haul, and then the color in the middle filling the circles are saying if we think that there might be a huge impact, moderate impact, or no impact. What you are seeing here is that the situation is very the average, and I will come back to the fundamental macroeconomic rationale behind that in 1 minute. What we are thinking and what we are seeing in our model is that head haul are more impacted than backhaul, especially on Trans-Pacific and Asia-Europe. Backhaul might in fact be not impacted or even have a slight positive impact. And you also have what you are seeing here, more impact typically on head hauls to the US than on head hauls to Latin America. I did not put numbers here because again, what we are trying to do with our model is that you are inputting scenarios macroeconomically speaking, and then you are deriving volumes. So what we can do with our clients is basically we have our own view at BCG, but we can also input what the client is thinking about his own view on how his clients are behaving, or the volumes the client will have in the coming month, input it into the model and translate it into volumes. I would like really to discuss the three fundamental trends that we are seeing in our model. First of all, I already mentioned it, head haul more impacted than backhaul by the impact of COVID. Why is that so? As you know, I mean, volumes on the large east-west trades are mainly driven by the consumption of consumption areas. So the American household, the European household. And as you know, Chinese economy has been quite resilient compared to European and American economy. What you are seeing in consumer surveys is that European and American households are quite, afraid of the situation, and they do not spend at their normative level. And as a consequence, typically the volumes from China to the US will be affected. On the contrary, as the Chinese economy is quite resilient and has come back quite quickly to its normative level, their level of import, in fact, remains quite high. You know, China is importing both for the internal consumption of its customers, but also some raw material. Then China is then transforming and sending back everywhere in the world. And so that's one of the key reasons for this difference between head haul and backhaul is the different dynamic and resilience of economies between very advanced economies and emerging or developing economies. Second trend, short sea versus deep sea. What you are currently seeing and what we expect to see more in the coming months is that a more resilient deep sea market than a more resilient short sea market rather than deep sea market. Some of the reason for that, let's say liner market reason and fundamental economic reason. Liner market reason is that the short sea markets are made of a lot of smaller players, and you have a lot of small trades. And so you have kind of an averaging. You cannot see the big swing, in terms of volumes that you are seeing on the east-west trades. As I mentioned before, if the free alliances drop 20% of the capacity, then the market is completely changing. That cannot happen on short sea trades because you have a lot of independent players and you have a lot of different smaller routes. So in a way, you cannot see this kind of huge swings in terms of market. Another fundamental reason is that, or at least for some industry, we are currently seeing a regionalization phenomenon, i.e., some of the players trying to have shorter logistic chain. Why is that so? Because shorter logistic chain are more easily controlled. You do know in terms of risk management, which is no quick question for shippers. It's less dangerous to have shorter logistic chain rather than big ones. And we are starting to see some decision of typically automotive company willing to build cars in North Africa and importing it to Europe rather than doing it in Asia. So it's not a general trend. It depends a lot of the type of goods you are talking about, but it's an existing trend, and it's something on which we see a lot of our clients are working on, i.e., how do I de-risk my supply chain? And that's one of the reasons why we think that there might be more stability on the short sea side rather than on the deep sea side. And the last question, I already a bit mentioned it, is a question of developing countries compared to more advanced economies. I mean, today you have a lot of different scenarios, and every economist is saying a different thing. But one thing which is common among economists is that everybody thinks that the advanced economies will have a deeper drop in terms of GDP compared to emerging economies which are more resilient. And it will not come as a surprise if at the end, when you modelize container volumes, typically comparing Asia Europe to Asia Latam, you expect the trade to emerging countries to be a bit more resilient than the ones to more advanced economies, which are again seeing a larger drop in terms of GDP and a larger drop in terms of consumption. So, I mean, these are the three of the fundamental trends we are seeing in our model. No, in fact, not depending really on what how deep you think the different drop will be. So that's all for what we wanted to share with you today. Maybe Christian, I leave the floor to you to start asking questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was super interesting. We got some questions here in the public chat. One is from Mr. Rashid, concerning sort of capacity development in the market. So we've seen, as you mentioned, also a very quick reaction by the big alliances to remove capacity from the market. How will that develop or pan out going forward? Will liners stop adding excessive shipping capacity into the market and keep rates stable going forward?
Maybe I can have a first pass at that. So for sure, also as David mentioned, I mean, the dynamics of the whole market has changed, right? You don't have 16 or 18 players jockeying for space. It is more controlled now, of course, with the alliances, and we've seen that kind of that they are able to act kind of in a sensible way, which has historically never been the case. So for sure, those underlying kind of dynamics of how these things are done, I guess, will have an impact. But having said that, I mean, of course, the steel that's out there today will be deployed. So the kind of mid to long-term interesting question is to see how the influx of capacity or new build capacity is going to come on stream and how much capacity is taken out of the market. And there we've seen the new build orders go down for sure. But we still believe that kind of that underlying issue about yards needing to be busy to build ships is going to be out there. So there will be a lot of pressure from the yards to make very good offers to still build ships. So that's a little bit kind of the counterbalance. But I think in summary, better behavior by the industry. We see new building orders going down. So all of that will level out. Mid to long term, those would be the main drivers. The only kind of counterbalance is that we can see, we also see new building orders actually being issued, especially from China and other.
Yeah.
So, and they of course will be deployed. So I think the short answer is more discipline, but still to see how the capacity situation develops. I don't know, David, if you have additional comments.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, what you are seeing, an ability to manage the current capacity. No, the question is how you will manage new ones. You know that when you are a liner and you are upgrading your ship from 15,000 to 20,000, you have to fill in your ships. If you don't do it, you are losing a lot of money. And as you want to fill your ships, then you have to reduce your rates. And again, one point I would like to add is that this capacity management is very efficient from a liner perspective on the East-West trades, and it's less the case on other trades. You have short sea trades where you have a lot of different offering and in fact few large VSAs. And in the middle, you have some trades which are not east-west trades, but where you have, let's say, a reduced number of offering. Typically, I know Europe to Latin America, or even Africa to Latin America. You have a reduced number of offering. So the ability of the liners to control capacity will also depend on this type of strategy in terms of partnership per trade lane, and again, which is very different from large east-west trades compared to other ones.
Yeah, gotcha. Very extensive answer. Thank you so much. We already reached the end of the session, but there's two more questions. Let's quickly touch base on them as well. One is about digitalization, but let's focus on the container production topic first, because that's very similar to the capacities question that we just discussed. So I guess this aims at container production, so the actual physical steel boxes. Very interesting, of course, for our traders and leasing companies that are in the market. And the liners themselves. Do you have any insight on how this crisis will impact sort of capacity development in the actual container fleet?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, and just kind of a caveat, it's not something that we looked into in much detail, but kind of what we know is that the kind of entry and exit barriers for container productions are fairly low. I mean, this is, low level production that can be ramped up and ramped down fairly quickly. It basically, the biggest variation on that one is of course the steel prices, how they develop, and then of course the offtake that you see on the other side. So I guess the production capacity is more flexible. So I guess I don't think that the COVID crisis per se will change those underlying dynamics, and I think you will see now, even with kind of that certain spike in demand going up, that all of a sudden you need more boxes and there will be a big pull, and therefore container liners probably buy more boxes because there's simply a certain need for it. So I think long term, those swings in the container market, all other things being equal, will actually benefit container production companies, because the larger the swings, the more peaks you have, and of course you need to plan somehow for the peaks if you're in this business. I know it's not a kind of a very robust answer, but I think that's what we have. I don't know, David, if you have additional insights on that.
No, I agree, fully agree with you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then the last question that's here in the chat concerning digitalization in general. What do you think will be the impact of COVID-19 on the long-term trends towards digitalization? How would it pan out?
There's no doubt that the whole industry has been very obsessed with digitalization for the last, let's say, put it at 5 years, and a lot has happened. One of the things, of course, is the container exchange, but also many other initiatives. And there's no doubt that the industry is really a laggard if you compare to other industries in terms of the maturity of digitalization. So they still have a large catch-up to do, and that will continue. And I think that the COVID crisis is probably going to excel this to somewhat, simply because of new working patterns from everybody. So and you saw that very clearly, that some of the better organized companies on the digital front, they were able to shift very fast because the processes were digital. Other companies were more manual, and they basically really suffered because they could not work from home, right? And I think we will see those working patterns change, and that demand for container companies, or the whole industry, in fact, being more responsive and transporting processes to digital will accelerate quite a lot. And that's not only for this industry, but if we contrast that to many other industries, that's just the name of the game. More and more will just go online.
Yeah.
Consumers do it, businesses do it. So there's no doubt in my mind that this will have a strongly accelerating effect, both on the internal processes of a container company, but also on the kind of go-to-market and how that interface between their customers, you as freight forwards, that will happen going forward. So the clear answer is yes.
I will maybe add just 2 words: agility, transparency. On top of the change of behavior, what you are seeing is that what people have really realized, what the industry has realized, is that to manage such type of crisis, you need very instantaneous transparency on what is happening everywhere in the world, and you need agility to react, reallocate your flux, change from one service to another, etc., etc. And to do so, being agile and transparent, I mean, digital is a fundamental asset. And so, in fact, companies having, a visibility on their flux everywhere and ability to in a very agile way reallocate their flux have been the one able to really deal well with this crisis. And so, these two fundamental questions: how will I be more agile in the future, and how will I have more transparency on what is happening in my transportation, and especially maritime transportation, I think will be key driver and key push for the digitalization of the industry.
Okay, great. I think I can only agree to that. If I could put my 2 cents onto that as well, it is an accelerating factor, this crisis on the trend of digitalization. So we're looking forward to a digital future, so to speak. Thank you so much to the both of you. This was very, very interesting, very comprehensive. Excited again to have had you here on the DCS, and maybe you have some interesting one-on-one meetings scheduled as well. Thank you so much, and
Thanks.
see you next time.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.